name is Babami Benes, Jason Dropic. I serve as the head of school at the Indian Community School, and I'm very, very thankful to have the opportunity to gather with all of you here today on this special day, Earth Day, which is interesting when you think about that from a indigenous perspective, because we really have been taught and know that every day is Earth Day. Every day we have a responsibility to take care of our Earth. And so as I get into a couple of just beginning remarks, I want to first start and acknowledge the land and the water. So we first acknowledge the land and the water that has become home to the Indian Community School. We acknowledge all of the caretakers of this land, including those who have been removed or erased from their traditional homelands here. Those who most recently lived here as a nation, the Potawatomi, Keepers of the Fire, who reside here as part of the Three Fires Confederacy and are known today as the Potawatomi. Those whose creation stories took place in neighboring lands and who have called this territory home since time immemorial. The Ho-Chungra, people of the sacred voice, today known as the Ho-Chunk, and the Ometnewuk, people of the wild rice, known today as the Menominee. The most recent caretakers, the students, teachers, staff, and board of directors of the Indian Community School, and the faces of our ancestors yet to come. So as we get started with those, I apologize for speaking in front of my elders. I do be here with all of you, and those teachings are really important. Students are gathered here with very special guests on a very special day to share in our responsibilities, that collective responsibility to take care of the land and the water and all of creation. Those responsibilities are important, and students that are here, you're here because that's your responsibility as well. And as we lead organizations, whether it's the Indian Community School or our special guests here that work in Wisconsin in government to help support, we work together to do what's right by all of creation. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here to remind us of those responsibilities, because we cannot live without the land and the water and the creation, but it most certainly could live without us. And so as you take on those responsibilities, students, continue to make sure that you are making good decisions for the generations yet to come. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our guests as we continue to acknowledge this special day, gather and talk a little bit about why we are here together. So with that, it is a great honor and privilege to be able to introduce Wisconsin, Mr. Tony Evers.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning and happy Earth Day, folks. And I know every day should be. Oops. This is what you want me to do? This is called a microphone. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here today for our second executive order signing at the Indian Community School. And last time we did it in this beautiful, beautiful room, and it's just this is stunning. And thank you, Principal, for all that you do, and the educators and staff here, and students for welcoming us to this great school. And there are frankly too many others to list here today to thank, but I want to recognize and thank the many stakeholders who have joined us, including members of the Task Force on Climate Change, and thank you for being here. The climate crisis has taken an undeniable toll on the people of our state. Every Wisconsinite, whether they live in the driftless area of the state or the central sands or the north woods or in the heart of our urban area, has experienced the impact of climate change. Over the last few years, increased flooding, tornadoes, high winds, blizzards, and other severe weather events caused in large part by climate change have cost Wisconsin communities and the businesses and farmers and families just absolutely millions of dollars. From our rural communities who have had roads and bridges wash out entirely but often lack the resources to rebuild, to our farmers who have lost their crops, and our small business owners who have seen their businesses destroyed overnight. And far too often, communities of color and low-income communities are forced to live, work, and play near sources of pollution, leading to poor health outcomes. We cannot ignore the role environmental justice plays in building a state where every family and every zip code can be successful. And because of how climate change impacts a community is often determined by their vulnerability and resilience, less resourced communities who already face inequities are at a greater risk to be harmed, including communities of color and tribal nations, low-income Wisconsinites, and our farmers and rural communities. Everyone in this state deserves to live in a healthy and safe environment with clean water to drink and clean air to breathe, period. That's why, shortly after taking office, I made sure Wisconsin joined the U.S. Climate Alliance, and why we pushed the state's goal of electricity by 2015. We established that important task force on climate change and created the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. That all happened within the first year I was governor of this great state. And we've been hard at work since. The task force on climate change conducted their work and provided a comprehensive report with 55 strategies to address the climate change in our state, many of which were in my 2021-23 biennial budget proposal. And earlier this week, we announced the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, which has developed and released the state's first ever clean energy plan. This plan provides a roadmap forward for our state's transition to a strong, clean energy economy with specific strategies that will ensure movement towards our state's carbon-free power goals, increase and improve the health and well-being of the folks across the state. This is great news, and while we know we must take these efforts to mitigate carbon emissions and slow the impacts of climate change, we also know this change won't happen overnight. Meanwhile, extreme weather events and harmful pollution will continue to impact communities across our state. So we need to prioritize building resilience to climate change is still ahead of us. So today, I'm glad to be here on Earth Day to announce that I will be signing an executive order creating the Office of Environmental Justice in Wisconsin to ensure we are building a more just and resilient state for our future. People, and I know people in this room have been calling for the creation of this office, which is why it was included as a recommendation in both the Clean Energy Plan and in our task force on climate change final report, and why it was included in our 21-23 biennial budget proposal. And while it was unfortunately removed from the final budget, I'm glad to say we're doing it anyway. This office will work alongside the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy to facilitate collaboration on environmentally just policy solutions across state agencies and engage with environmental justice advocates, communities of color, tribal nations, and low-income populations. The office will include a Director of Environmental Justice to lead the office's efforts, as well as a Chief Resilience Officer to ensure that every Wisconsinite, no matter what zip code they live in or socioeconomic status, has the resources and ability to not just recover and rebuild, but to protect their communities from these damaging events in the first place. At the end of the day, the cost of doing nothing is far too high, and we can't ignore the reality facing communities across our state any longer. Addressing climate change doesn't mean leaving behind our state's history or our traditions. In fact, it is that very history and that very tradition that demands that we move forward. From the indigenous people who were first stewards of our land to our who have been the backbone of our state for generations, to our outdoor recreation economy. This is the birthplace of Earth Day. We used to be a national leader in conservation, and we can be again. Wisconsin is ready to embrace bold and urgent solutions and a future where we don't have to choose between mitigating climate change and protecting our environment and good-paying jobs and economic development. It's all doable, folks. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a statewide leader on environmental justice and a member of our task force on climate change, Preston Cole, who just so happens to be the secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Preston, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, I love those voices. Love those voices. Thank you for having me. Wonderful opportunity to share the morning with you on such this important day in our history, certainly an important day to folks in my business. But first, let me take a few moments to tell you a little bit about what our governor's been working on. This idea of environmental protections is first and foremost, not only to him, but to me, and we're going to make sure that when we landed, that clean air and water would be our calling card for communities all over the states of Wisconsin. Because, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's environmental protection, whether it's our education system, whether it's the internet that kids your age throughout the state of Wisconsin don't have access to, this young man bellied up enough money to ensure that our economy is robust around these systems. Now, having said that, he continues to pardon individuals in our society after they leave prison, and you know the drama in trying to find a job in a neighborhood. The work that this is monumental for me and monumental for you. As a trained chemist, who knew that when Tony Evers landed as governor of the state of Wisconsin, that he would continue to lead on education, environmental protection, and stabilizing our economy. Governor, you led us through some of the most dire circumstances ever faced in this country. Thank you for that. These young people, thank you for that. And before I leave, I'll make sure each and every one of you get a job with the DNR. www.dnr.wisconsin. And so today, again, is about the opportunity, how excited we are at the DNR. And both me and my staff take this work very seriously. It's a job that is important for us. This environmental justice piece is an essential part of the work we do to protect Wisconsinites, our air, our land, and our water, especially for those who have traditionally worked, lived, and played closest to areas of pollution. And that's what we're talking about. Being able to be a voice for those individuals that, again, are encumbered by PFAS in our water. Lead laterals. We have over 100 communities in the state of Wisconsin. So as parents are thumbing through, the visitor books across the country, dear, where do you want to go this summer? Let's go to Marinette. Let's go to Peshtigo. These are communities that are encumbered by PFAS in the drinking water. With those voting dollars, it's important for us to clean up our systems. This governor continues to work with the federal government to ensure that we have the necessary resources to protect human health and the water in which we drink. Subsequently, these cities, towns, and villages, as people make their way to these locations and to our tribal communities, because this idea of getting outdoors and being able to go to tribal locations is a big part of our recreation and our outdoor economy as well. So our partners that are here with us today, this facility today is a testament of what's possible. It's a testament that you folks are pulling in the same direction together. Now, having said that, our economy in the state of Wisconsin around outdoor recreation, $18 billion. Everybody makes their way to Wisconsin to get in the outdoors. We broke every record in park visitorship during the pandemic. We are number 3 in out-of-state fishing license sales in this country. Folks, We have something special here in Wisconsin, and it needs protection because our economy and our jobs are too doggone important. Don't thank me. Don't thank me. This is a young man that you need to thank because I am able to carry, literally, his water. So, what this means is having someone who can help us make sure that there's fair treatment and meaningful involvement for all people relating to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws and regulations and policies. Look, Wisconsin, our climate is absolutely changing with far-reaching consequences for our community, our natural resources, and our economic sectors. We know that climate change impacts all of our communities. However, our black and brown brothers and sisters, our tribal nations, and low-income communities are often the hardest hit. And let me tell you, folks, our responsibility is to look forward to individual communities that need our assistance. While some governors are suing Snow White and the Seven Doors, our governor is putting us in play with environmental protections in communities that haven't had those environmental protections. They're hit by pollution, industry shifts, extreme weather related to climate change, environmental health hazards, and the like. Those impacts only are compounded in existing systemic inequities already affecting where we live, work, and play. Our water, our air is far too important. Know that this position is going to advise myself and the governor and the policy team, which is a think tank with Winona and Jamie and their team. They have done a yeoman's job in the governor's office. So I have to give them a shout out because they're thoughtful, they're heartfelt, it's meaningful, the work that they do in the governor's office, and I have to acknowledge those folks that help put these ideas in play for those at my level. We're standing at a monumental time, and I feel it. I want you folks to feel it. We're going to work our butts off to ensure that these positions associated with environmental protections do and deliver on the promise that Governor Evers has put before us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. I'm excited for what this proposes. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. I'm not the only soldier in this battle. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Secretary Cole, for your leadership, especially in these difficult times. But as we know, difficult times are made much easier when we do the work together. So just want to express my sincere appreciation for the trips we've taken across this state, the conversations we've had with so many people, many who are in the room today, about how we make Wisconsin a national leader. Once again, as Governor Evers so eloquently stated, we have a responsibility here in Wisconsin, and this is an administration that is living up to that responsibility, holding up our end of the bargain, delivering on the promise of a healthy and sustainable planet that starts with Wisconsin's leadership. And I'm proud that the work that we are doing with this administration to protect our natural resources will make us safer, healthier, and stronger, and a more attractive place, a place where young people will want to stay. People will not just want to come visit, but want to lay roots, raise a family, to start new beginnings, to chart a new future for the state of Wisconsin. So again, I'm Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, and I was proudly honored to be able to serve as the chair of the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change. As was mentioned before, we were a leader in Wisconsin, and somewhere along the way, we seem to have lost our way. But I'm proud that we stepped up, we met the moment. And even though we fell back for a few years, 8 to be exact, the fact is we saw what was going on in other states. We saw the things that went right, we saw the things that went wrong, we had an example to follow. And as the governor mentioned, we joined the U.S. Climate Alliance, which was a bipartisan coalition of states that vowed to uphold the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement in the absence of leadership from Washington, D.C. when we were pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. We said, we're still in. We're still going to do the right thing because our future depends on it. The children in this room, the children across the country, the children across the globe, they deserve it. And so I am elated to see the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice, as this is one of our key recommendations. So often, the idea of climate leadership, environmental protection, can seem concentrated within specific communities, but we know that the impact is felt the most on marginalized communities, low-income communities, communities of color, rural communities, and otherwise, the people who don't always have a voice at the table. And with the Office of Environmental Justice, everybody will have a voice at the table. As the governor said, he initially included this recommendation in the 21-23 biennial budget. Unfortunately, it was stripped out by some people in the legislature that don't see this as a priority, people who will rather put money over the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of this state. Not only was it unfortunate, it was a sad testament of the way that things have been going for far too long, the reason that we're in this mess in the first place. It's safe to say that the creation of this office has jumped many hurdles, but throughout the challenges, I think that's what makes this day that much more meaningful. And so I want to thank you, Governor, for your leadership in ensuring that this administration is committed to environmental justice in the state of Wisconsin. This is a part of our legacy in the state. Earth Day was started in Wisconsin, and there's no way we can turn our backs on what got us here in the first place. Now, the existential threats that we face, including the climate crisis, systemic racism, injustice, they're all interrelated. We can't solve one without the other, and that's why when I took an oath of office in 2019, 3 years ago, I said that we're going to lead with the core principles of equity and sustainability, because the two have to work in tandem. We know that we can't afford to be siloed, or as the governor says, you outlawed the word silo when we first took office. He said we got to call them cylinders of excellence. So, well, we can't be siloed or we'll fail. And we can't be in our own individual cylinders of excellence, or else we'll never learn from one another. We'll never be able to grow together. And so, as the governor also loved to say, it's about time we start connecting the dots. Now, in this state, communities of color face disproportionate impacts when it comes to climate change, as we do with so many other issues, including health and economics. But this is brought on by a lack of resources and a lack of attention paid by decision-making institutions. And this puts individuals at an unjust and a higher risk for damaged health conditions. And I'll tell you, when one community suffers more than the rest, it does, in fact, impact everybody. And it's about time that people start to realize the interconnectedness of this all, especially given the fact that we've gone through a once and hopefully lifetime pandemic, how one person's health can absolutely disrupt the entire globe. Now, I want to stress the importance of not giving up, because that's the easy thing to do. As frustrating as things can be, as there are so many forces that have lined up against us in so many efforts to improve people's quality of life, giving up is not an option, especially for so many communities that don't have the luxury or the privilege to even be in a room like this. The people who aren't able to speak up for themselves, the people who aren't able to advocate for their own family or larger communities. And that's why I'm so proud of the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice, because it ensures that we will stand up, that we will never give up, and we will keep pushing for the change that all of our communities so desperately need. So with that being said, I just want to thank you again, Governor Evers, for your leadership, for the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice. Secretary Cole said he was not the only soldier in this fight, nor am I, nor any other previous speakers, and I'm proud to introduce someone I've known for a long time, who's been on the ground, taking the challenges as they come. My good friend, Pam Ricker of Clean, Wisconsin.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for hosting us here in this beautiful building with all these beautiful children around us. And let me try not to get emotional, but I mean, looking at these kids, we know why the creation of this office is so important. We know why the delivery of the Clean Energy Plan is so important. We have a lot of work to do, and we're just so excited that the Office of Environmental Justice will be there and will be a partner for us in this work. As Lieutenant Governor Barnes said, my name is Pamela Ricker de la Rosa. I'm a Milwaukee Program Director and a staff attorney with Clean Wisconsin. I'm also a member of the planning team of the Milwaukee Environmental Justice Roundtable. And I remember the first time we sat down in November 2019 in Milwaukee, and we said, we need an Office of Environmental Justice. We need to join our other Great Lakes states in having this important institution here to be able to gather the heads of all the different agencies that go into impacting environmental justice, the Department of Transportation, Public Service Commission, all of these different agencies, and have this office over them and really be coordinating and to allow of past harms and the prevention of future harm. And we thank you so much for taking this step to remediating, again, these past environmental harms and prevention of future harms. But beyond that, we really look forward to having this office being a partner in ensuring that all Wisconsinites have equal access to our state's beautiful natural resources and are able to enjoy these places and practice their treaty rights without the threat of intimidation. Moreover, we look forward to the creation of this being born out of the Climate Change Task Force in close collaboration with the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, and really having this office partner to ensure that the thousands of good-paying green jobs that are needed to transition our energy and transportation systems to avert the worst impacts of climate change, that these jobs are accessible to all Wisconsinites, and that we're building the pipelines and the systems to ensure that all of our members of our community can access these green jobs and feel that purpose and really making the necessary transformations that we have to make. We also know that investing in fighting climate change and fighting our other environmental health crises like lead poisoning, like contaminated water, that investing in these changes can really help to solve the economic crises that many individuals in our underserved communities are living with every day. Because these are jobs that can't be outsourced and they can't be automated. These are jobs that are coming in, making our homes more energy efficient, more comfortable, installing solar panels, making the components of wind turbines, and replacing our lead service lines. These are all jobs that can and should be here, and we can all strengthen our economy. We can make our community increasingly green and healthy for all of us, because that's really what it comes down to, having healthy communities and having an improved quality of life. And so we are so grateful that the governor's office, that the governor's staff has been working so closely with all of us, with all of us on Milwaukee Environmental Justice Roundtable. They've just been really great collaborators, and we look forward to that continuing collaboration and making sure that we're working together and solving these crises and making all of this happen. We know that we can. So thank you so much. Sorry. And I would like to introduce my fellow member of the Milwaukee Environmental Justice Planning Team, Ms. Huda Alkaf, who is founder and director of Wisconsin Green Muslims, a wonderful organization that has been operating for at least 17 years.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, everyone. I start Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most gracious, most Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. I'm Huda Alkaf. I'm an ecologist. I'm an environmental educator and environmental justice activist, and the founder and director of Wisconsin Green Muslims, a grassroots environmental justice group that formed in 2005. For 17 years now, connecting faith, environmental justice, sustainability, and healing through education and service. I'm also a member of the Milwaukee Environmental Justice Roundtable Planning and Leadership Team. Muslims are now in the midst of Ramadan, the Islamic holy month of daily fasting from dawn till dusk. It is time of deep spiritual reflection, increased piety and compassion, and heightened devotion and worship. it is also definitely a time to stand up for climate justice and environmental justice for overburdened and overlooked and under-resourced communities. My journey with the Office of Environmental Justice began in July 20, where I brought up the issue with the staff of the governor and lieutenant governor when I mentioned to them that our neighboring states are ahead of us, and we do not want Wisconsin to be left behind for too long. So now, at least 3 years in combination, in collaboration with the Milwaukee Environmental Justice Roundtable, 3 years of organizing and community engagement, and here we are today, witnessing the beginning of the journey to deliver climate justice and environmental justice in Wisconsin. We are looking forward to engage in this process. American Muslims are a minority faith group that experiences Islamophobia, discrimination, and structural racism, and hence our voices must also be heard. So in community, let's do it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. And now I'm going to spend some time signing this executive order. Really exciting day. A lot of people have been waiting for this day. A lot of people have been working towards a culmination of making this happen. And that's really important to me, obviously, to sign this and get it going. But it's the work going forward that counts. And whether it's the implementation of our clean energy plan or issues as it relates to mitigation of the impact of climate change on our state, and in particular on those communities that we were just talking about. This is important work. It's difficult work. It's not without political rancor, but at the end of the day, we know we are in the right place. So I'm very glad to be with you today and to sign this document. Anybody wants to stand behind? Yes, you. Executive Order 161 relating to the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice.